pounds. The team race, Bo Nickel, if he wins it, Penn State clinches the title. And if Miles Martin wins it, they could trail by 2 or tie and send it to the heavyweight match between Kyle Snyder and Adam Kuhn. So off we go. Bo Nickel, the redshirt junior for Penn State in the blue, and Miles Martin, the junior from Penns Grove, New Jersey, for Ohio State in the gray.
Till the day I die. Hey, swing those hips around. Can't stop, roll back down. My ladies, short, tall, thin or wide, always down and ready to ride.
The NCAA Tournament is widely agreed to be the best wrestling tournament known to man. However, I think if you ask any fan of wrestling about it, you'll get several different answers. People love the environment, the storylines, they love supporting their alma mater, they have a local team they like to support, they live near the host venue, their son wrestles, they love the food, and oh yeah, there is some of the best wrestling ever spread across 3 days, literally ran perfectly. Olympic champions have gone on to say there is nothing like the NCAA Wrestling Tournament. It is one of the hardest tournaments ever just based on the length and mental battles alone. However, at the end of the day, nothing feels better than becoming a national champion and feeling your hand get raised in front of thousands of pure-hearted wrestling fans. So with all that said, what made the 2018 national tournament so special? Because if you really think about it, every year is an awesome experience, so when every year is something special, how does one of those years stand above them all? Well, to give the short answer, 2018 had easily one of the best team races ever. Not because it came down to the last 2 matches essentially, but because of the build-up that I think started all the way back in 2014. For the first time in what seemed like a long time, it looked like the reigning dynasty of Penn State could actually be taken out. Currently led by David Taylor and Ed Ruth during their senior campaigns, Taylor and Ruth were 2 prolific bonus point machines that almost seemed unstoppable. The bigger the stage, the better they looked. However, there were 2 teams looking to crash the party: the host school Oklahoma State Cowboys, and the only team to put a blemish on Penn State's dual resume that season, the Minnesota Gophers.
Coach Robinson.
I think it's pretty much the same for all the coaches, is that I think this is the one thing that we all look forward to as coaches and as competitors and actually as fans, is to this point to see what happens, to see who's the best. So what's going to happen is going to happen like every national tournament we've ever been to. There's going to be a lot of highs, there's going to be a lot of lows, but overall it's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of fun for the fans and everybody else.
Minnesota had a pretty loaded squad with guys like heavyweight legend Tony Nelson going for his 3rd national title, 157 pinning machine Dylan Ness, and longtime All-Americans like Scott Sheeler at 197 and Logan Storley at 174. They had the team and the moments to beat Penn State in the duel, but could they get it done where Penn State seemed to have all the magic? The NCAA Tournament, especially since Penn State would close the gap to win the Big Ten Tournament, with Minnesota taking 3rd behind Penn State and the runner-up team Iowa. If Minnesota couldn't get it done though, there was those Cowboys that were for sure going to try, even though they lost a late duel to Penn State 23-12. However, one thing Oklahoma State had over the other 2 teams was more star power for the time. In today's landscape, if you don't have close to 10 guys pushing to be All-Americans, good luck. But back at 2014, if you had more finalist potential wrestlers, you had a very high probability of winning it all. Oklahoma State stars included returning national champ Chris Perry, sophomore phenom Alex Derringer looking for his first national title, veteran Tyler Caldwell along with heavyweight Austin Marston, and 149 Josh Kindig. Oklahoma State would need all of these guys plus some to really step up, but it was not out of the question, especially for a team like Okie State.
Coach Sanderson.
Just like everyone else, we're excited. We're grateful for this opportunity. Definitely, I think we're ready to go, but we'll find that out over the next 3 days. But this is.
And now that we understand Oklahoma State and Minnesota's teams, what else did the David Taylor and Ed Ruth-led Penn State team have to combat them, considering they were basically mathematic underdogs? How did they swing the tide in 2014? Well, to be honest, it was an interesting year for them. The year prior, they needed a finals win from Quinn Wright to clinch their 2013 title, and after he became the first ever 4-time All-American for Penn State, they needed someone to refill his shoes, and that wrestler would be now Penn State legend and staple, Morgan McIntosh.
Shoe tonight against the redshirt sophomore, Morgan McIntosh.
Solid job right there by McIntosh.
Workmanlike, great execution, exciting, back points, McIntosh.
Another huge keynote that Penn State really needed was their big guns to bonus point. David Taylor went from winning the Hodge in 2012 after bumping up to 165 to losing one of the biggest college wrestling matches ever in 2013 to the one and only Kyle Dake. David Taylor was still a bonus point machine through that tournament, and they were going to need it again. Unfortunately, Ed Ruth's 84-match winning streak was snapped in 2014 by freshman Gabe Dean of Cornell, which absolutely no one saw coming. Nico Megaludis was another multiple-time All-American and multiple-time finalist heading into this season for the Nittany Lions, but he would have to go through his heel at the time, Jesse Delgado. Matt Brown started for the first time in the lineup in 2013 and made the national finals, so they were really expecting big things from him again. And finally, there was true freshman Zane Rutherford, who got one of the biggest upsets for the Nittany Lions very early into the Big Ten season.
Difficult to improve your position, but he's able to go ahead and get up to his feet. He's trying to get to the far ankle right there. If he does that, that's points. Notice how Stieber's flexibility there. He keeps that ankle as far away as he can. Rutherford understands that he's got to get it done right now because Stieber is really difficult to get away from. Driving through,
2 points.
2 point
The
takedown.
upset, the win over the 2-time NCAA champion.
Clearly knew what he had to do.
What a big, big upset and win for the true freshman, Zane Rutherford. The Benton High School Flash comes into Penn State. One of the bigger upsets, if not the biggest ever in Rec Hall. Wow.
Zane Rutherford won his first true test for the Nittany Lions, and it proved that he was a high All-American contender. However, with all these weapons, how could Minnesota or Oklahoma State possibly compete? Well, it all leads back to those finalist points. Oklahoma State would get 11 seed Josh Kindig into the national finals, giving them huge unexpected points, along with heavyweight 11 seed Austin Marsden slipping into the All-American round. They also had Alex Derringer secure his first national title by major decision, and Chris Perry would take out Andrew Howe to win his second national title as a Cowboy. However, Penn State still had more weapons, so what was the issue? Megaludis would downgrade from a 2-time finalist to finish in 3rd this year, Matt Brown would fall from a national finalist to a 5th place finisher, and Zane Rutherford could not repeat his moment against Logan Stieber at Big Tens, losing in the finals and in the NCAA semifinals. On the flip side of the coin, Minnesota had some magic moments to capitalize on Penn State's blunders. They of course had Nelson make his 3rd national finals, along with Dylan Ness entering the 157 finals as the 9 seed. David Thorne would upgrade from an 8 seed to a 5th place All-American finish. Daniel Zilverberg really made things interesting, being the 15 seed, slipping into the All-American round. Story placed 3rd in the meat grinder of 174, where everyone wrestled really close with each other. 184 and 197 had All-Americans for them, with Kevin Steinhaus finishing in 5th and Scott Sheeler in 3rd. So with 7 All-Americans and 2 finalists, how did Penn State do it? Well, Kale still had some magic left heading into day 3. Ed Ruth would get his Gabe Dean match back in the semifinals before knocking off the number 1 seed from Maryland, Shep Talk. David Taylor would go on to beat Oklahoma State's other finalist, Tyler Caldwell, to finish off his amazing career as well. However, one real surprise was unseeded wrestler James English taking out returning national champ Kendrick Maple of Oklahoma in the 7th place match, which gave Penn State some very, very unexpected points. Plus the fact that they ran with Zane his true freshman year, and they had Morgan McIntosh in waiting really helped Penn State even compete with Minnesota this season, because the Gophers were so close to winning this tournament. However, after Tony Nelson would go down to future great Nick Wisdowski of NC State, denying Nelson his 3rd national title, along with Alex Derringer knocking off Dylan Ness in their national finals, the team race would get locked up, giving Penn State the 2014 team trophy over Minnesota 109.5 to 104. Now, with all that said, what does any of this have to do with 2018? Well, it gave a certain team a lot of hope, and it wasn't Minnesota or Oklahoma State.
You can win a competition and get lucky. You can't win a practice and get lucky. Right, Snyder? I was saying you can win a competition and get lucky, but you can't win a practice and get lucky.
At 141, Logan Stieber would set himself up to be one of the greatest of all time in the NCAA landscape. Logan Stieber will win his 3rd national title, giving Ohio State their only champion this year. They would look on to the next year, where Penn State would lose David Taylor, Ed Ruth, redshirt Zane Rutherford, redshirt Nico Megaludis, for reasons that seemed crazy at the time.
It's already a 10-1 lead for Jason Nolf, and he ends it. The pin for Jason Nolf comes early in this one. It took just a minute and 7 seconds.
Some might even argue that was a bit slow for Nolf, maybe even possibly under a minute, but does a great job there.
Coming into the 2018 season, it looked like no one would touch Penn State. They had Nick Suriano returning after a great freshman campaign that ended due to injury. Jared Cortez also had a season-ending injury but was bumping up to 141, with transfer Corey Keener jumping in at 133, and he was a several-time national qualifier for Central Michigan. On top of all that, they had their big guns Bo Nichols, Zane Rutherford, Mark Hall, Vincenzo Joseph, and Jason Nolf. However, there was a few problems, the first of which Nick Suriano wouldn't actually return to Penn State. He would transfer out during the summer to wrestle for Rutgers. Penn State would have several other lineup issues too, but for now, there was one other early season problem, growing and growing fast, and it seemed to gain more and more confidence as the season went on. The Ohio State University was very legit.
Another shot attempt by Tomasello. Gets a takedown to his back, getting near fall. 97-pound, and just like we expected, more in on a shot. 2 points already. Miles going upper body again. Gets the takedown. No near fall there. There's one from Minnesota. Kyle right back in on the shot. There's another takedown. 30 seconds left. And that's going to be the tag. So technical fall victory for Kyle Snyder. Loses his pin
goes
streak.
to 5-0 on the year. It's hard to keep up with that pace. I mean, as a big guy, the constant pressure, the constant attacking.
Right.
That's a tough thing to keep up with.
During the summer, Ohio State gained mega transfer Joey McKenna from Stanford, a high All-American in 2016, but he failed to reach the podium in 2017. He was looking for a change, and he found it in Ohio State, which that small change took Ohio State from a trophy team to a full-on title contender. On top of all that, Kyle Snyder will be going for his 3rd national title. Miles Martin, one of the only 2 wrestlers to ever beat Bo Nickal, was back. Colin Moore was the easy 197 favorite coming into the year. Nathan Tomasello was back down to 125, where he won his 1st national title, along with Luke Pletcher moving down to 133, where he was a high All-American, if not a national title contender. The biggest difference between Penn State and Ohio State was the method of victory. No one was beating the heavy hitters of Penn State, but in 2014 pointed out anything, it was sometimes quantity can actually beat quality. Not that Ohio State didn't have quality, but Ohio State was trying the 2014 Minnesota strategy. However, they had more power to pull it off. Ohio State had the chance to have 10 All-Americans, and several of them could have been very high All-Americans. This strategy was the best and the only method to really take out Penn State, and at the time, it really seemed like it was going to work. After winning an entertaining title, it seemed like Penn State was almost taking a step back to reload. They lost two huge leaders in Ruth and Taylor, along with Coach Sanderson also announcing the red shirts of Zane Rutherford, who was coming off a 5th place finish, and Nico Megaludis, who was a 2-time finalist and just finished placing 3rd. The main question was, well, why was Penn State doing this? Well, little did everyone know they had two huge commits coming in, and at the time their potential was really unknown. Those wrestlers were Jason Nolf and Bo Nickel.
Oh, the Hodge Trophy. Yeah, I've heard of that, I think. But no, I don't think that there's any like friendly competition. We're both just out there trying to do our best. Me at least, I don't know about you.
That's all we talk about.
During the time, it seemed like Cale Sanderson and staff were punting the year away so some redshirt freshmen could get some strong leadership in Rutherford and Megaludis. However, a storyline that was even bigger than Penn State punting was who was going to take over the national title race this year. The heavy favorite coming in was the Iowa Hawkeyes. Minnesota lost a lot of All-American power and kept some as well. Oklahoma State lost a few finalist points, and the rest of the field had a lot of unknown potential, which throughout an NCAA season can either work for you or really work against you. At the time though, throughout the season, Iowa was the leader of the pack. Returning 125 All-American Corey Clark was up to 133. This made room for Thomas Gilman at 125, creating one of the best 1-2 punches in the modern NCAA landscape. Bobby Tolford and Mike Evans had one more year to shine, and they were having impressive seasons. Along with redshirt freshman Brandon Sorensen really helping their lineup out at 149, taking out former NCAA finalist Josh Kindig during the famous Iowa versus Oklahoma State duel. So Iowa had some star power, but the rest of their lineup would really have to step up, and guys like Sammy Brooks were trying to make a name for themselves stepping in as a sophomore this season. Most of the season, Iowa being the front runner ran true, until a few interesting results started putting blemishes on their schedule, the first of which was the duel loss to Missouri at National Duels. This duel had a lot of action, and it came super late in the year with no one really seeing it coming. At the end of the day, Missouri just had more all-stars than Iowa, with Alan Waters being Thomas Gilman, Le'Veon Mays, Drake Howdeshelt, Joey LaValle, and returning NCAA champ Jaden Cox, all getting wins to take out Iowa 18-12. This instantly gave Missouri fans hope as one of the few teams that could capitalize on this Penn State punt year to win themselves a national title. Plus at Big Tens, Iowa would have another weird result in Ohio State being named co-champs with the Hawkeyes after the two schools ended up in an exact tie. Again, showing off that Ohio State was starting to show their star power. Nathan Tomasello will win an impressive bracket to take home gold at Big Tens. Bo Jordan made the Big Ten finals as a freshman. Cal started his first year at 197 where he would lose to one of Penn State's few returners, Morgan McIntosh. And then of course Logan Stieber would run through his weight at 141, winning by tech fall in the finals. One major thing to point out during this year was that no team had a full lineup of stars. Iowa did have some names, but if none of those starters made the finals, no one was really going to be that surprised. The same was true for about 99% of the other teams. So basically if a team could get a few finalists and some minor All-Americans, they could really run away with it. However, as we headed into the 2015 national tournament, the only teams that were being talked about was Iowa, who seemed to have lost some luster throughout the season, Ohio State, who just tied Iowa but lost to Lehigh at national duels, and Missouri, who beat the #1 ranked team Iowa in a duel but was not tested like the other two options. Oddly enough, Penn State also was talked about a little bit heading into the national tournament. Yes, they did redshirt some big guns and lose some heavy hitters, but they still had a lot of All-American level wrestlers, like Matt Brown, who was a 2-time All-American and 1-time finalist at this point, Jimmy Gulbon, who was having the best season of his career so far, Jordan Conaway was a great fill-in at 125, Jimmy Lawson at heavyweight was having a great season, and a lot of other wrestlers who could potentially make noise on the national tournament scene, which Penn State was kind of known for at this point. But with all the 2015 storylines out of the way, well, How did it go? Well, at the end of the day, it was madness. And yes, it came down to star power in the national finals.
There is Tom Ryan as the Buckeyes seek their first ever team title. Tom Ryan has fallen short twice to the Iowa Hawkeyes. In on that leg, looking for the takedown.
That shin whizzer. Waters is going to try to save himself with that shin whizzer right there.
Trying to get out of bounds, and it's 2 points with 5 seconds left. Tomasello takes the lead, and Tomasello wins it. He upsets Waters. He's in the championship.
Kyle Snyder of Ohio State knocks off the reigning national champion. 3-2. Snyder and Tomasello, the two freshman Buckeyes, rising to their feet. Logan Stever out of Monroeville, Ohio, here in St. Louis, dots the I of history. Logan Stever has become a legend, a 4-time champion.
Things happen. Things happen, and the amazing thing is, despite the fact that Hunter didn't score any points, I think he inspired the entire group. You know, you've got a guy that's willing to wrestle with no arms just to score 1 point for his team. I think it changed completely. It helped the mentality of the entire team. One of those guys, Kenny Court. So incredibly proud of this group. You know, we talked about be the change. You know, be the group that does it.
Ohio State would get 3 national finalists and 2 champs to Iowa's 1 finalist, Corey Clark. This fact ended up locking up the team title for the Bucks, with other guys like Kenny Courts placing 5th at 184, even though he entered the tournament unseeded. Bo Jordan would go on to place 3rd during his freshman campaign, going on a bonus point frenzy. And with all these little victories, the team race was locked up, winning Ohio State their first national title ever. And it couldn't have happened at a better time, with Logan Stever winning his 4th national title, becoming one of the select few to ever do it. It's kind of crazy how much reward you get for making the NCAA finals. Ohio State had 5 All-Americans to Iowa's 6, and the team race was still clinched up before the finals. Iowa did have some blunders, and Sorensen losing very early in the tournament, and he had to wrestle all the way back to the 3rd place match. Gilman would get pinned by upset kid Zeke Moisey, dropping him all the way down to the backside. Missouri also had some blunders early that resulted in them playing catch-up all tournament, along with only 1 of their 3 number 1 seeds making the finals, going 1 for 2 in the semifinals. Plus Edinboro, yes, Edinboro, would have 2 national finalists and 2 3rd place finishers to take home the 3rd place team trophy. At the end of the day, all these little things made the difference for Ohio State finishing in 1st place overall. The former champs Penn State, who yes, didn't get a team trophy, but still took 6th with a much different team than expected. Overall, wrestling fans were happy for Ohio State, Tom Ryan, and it was cool to see a new team win it, especially the Buckeyes, who came so close to taking out Iowa just a few years prior. However, this Ohio State title would really kickstart one of the biggest rivalries in the modern NCAA wrestling landscape.
Van Brill trying to pass an ankle. No points yet. Stalemate. Good job there by Van Brill, because Nolf was in super deep,
and it's a good call by the official there, because he called it potentially dangerous, and in that situation, Nolf's knee was strained, and so very competitive Van Brill.
On top of Nick Suriano not returning for Penn State, which did leave a big hole for them, they had several other huge drop-offs. Jared Cortez would have another season-ending injury at the Southern Scuffle after having a 10-1 record on the season. Corey Keener would become a national qualifier again, but he was a very on and off again wrestler with injuries. Whether or not Penn State was going to pull Nick Lee's red shirt was still very much in the air at this point in the season, and 197 was just a nightmare after the Southern Scuffle. For the first half of the season, Anthony Cassar was the guy for the Nittany Lions, but after a very shaky Southern Scuffle, that was really in question, especially with Shakur Rashid seeming to come out of nowhere, getting 5 bonus point wins, a Southern Scuffle title, and a common opponent win over Cassar, seemingly giving him the spot at 197. Nick Neville's also lost 2 matches to non-All-American level heavyweights, which at the time was really not good considering Penn State really needed his returning All-American points to take home the team trophy. Nick Lee would also have an interesting scuffle making the finals and having a fun match with Caden Gefeller of Oklahoma State before getting pinned, adding more interest on whether or not to pull his red shirt, especially with Cortez getting hurt at the same tournament. Kale also grabbed Boise State transfer Carson Kuhn, who honestly was a huge unknown. He never wrestled more than 11 matches in a year and was super injury prone. He never made it to nationals, but word was out that he was the best option for them at 125. So fans were left curious, but ultimately halfway through the season, the cracks were really beginning to show. The Big Five were doing their thing, but the other 5 were really dragging them down. On the flip side of the coin, how was Ohio State doing? Well, pretty dang good.
Tom, you guys won this tournament a year ago. Then came up second at NCAAs. Is there anything you learned from that preparation, the teardown from Big Tens, preparation from NCAAs that can help you try to finish the deal in Cleveland?
Yeah, last year we felt we'd have a perfect tournament, to win it. This team is better balanced, right? This team is better than last year's team, up and down the lineup. So, last year we had a perfect weekend. There were 5 matches, I've said this before, there were 5 matches we had to win last year, to win the Big Ten championship. And we went 5 for 5. That same thing needed to happen at the NCAAs, and it didn't. This weekend, we felt like we had a little more margin of error, and the guys wrestled out of their mind. Again, this is a team that stuck together, said they wanted to do something really special, and at the beginning of the year, and this weekend was special for us.
For starters, they had very little to any injuries this season. They dominated CKLV by over 30 points without Kyle Snyder competing. They crushed every dual opponent they faced, and most of all projections were really in their favor, almost the entire season. If Penn State wanted to beat Ohio State this season, they would need bonus, and almost every round they would need significant bonus and way more than luck. The only problem was, for the first time this season, and in a very long time, luck seemed to be working against Kale's Nittany Lions, with Jason Nolf suffering a very serious injury during the Rutgers duel, which at the time seemed almost catastrophic for their national chances.
Nico and Zane last year, you said it was all part of the plan. Is this the first step in that plan?
Well, I think so. I think you always have to be obviously planning ahead as a coach. That's your job. You got to be looking ahead to the future. And we have a great team this year, but we're very optimistic about the teams we're going to have next year and the year after and the year after that. So, having Zane as a leader, moving into that, and now we have some freshmen that we can obviously look to for leadership. I think it's worked out well.
Leading into the 2016 season, every wrestling fan wanted to know if Kale's plan worked. And oh boy, did it work. The closest duel margin was actually against Virginia Tech very early in the season, and that duel probably had some Nittany Lions fans pretty nervous. Jimmy Goulabon would bump up to 141 from 133, where he would drop his match to future All-American Solomon Chisco. Nico Megaludis, who was very hyped up, would lose a very close match to Joey Dance in overtime in a very interesting match at the time. However, at the end of the day, there was a lot of questions answered. Jordan Conaway would win after bumping up to 133 after All-American at 125, and he would once again All-American at 133 at a super tough weight class. Zane Rutherford opened up the Virginia Tech duel with a tech fall, and Penn State fans would get used to hearing that. Morgan McIntosh was back, getting a 9-2 win over another All-American for Virginia Tech, Jared Hott. Matt McCutcheon would major Zach Savasky, which, you guessed it, was another All-American for the Hokies. Jason Nolf and Bo Nickel both had decision wins during the Virginia Tech duel, but they faced Nick Bruschetta and Zach Epperly, who were both All-Americans that year. So Nolf and Nickel both proved themselves very early, along with Shakur Rashid, who in 2016 was their 165. However, Rashid would go on to say the weight pull was too much for him this season, and eventually Gino Morilli would take the spot, becoming a national qualifier this year actually. So early in the year, it seemed odd that a team that spent the last year loading up only beat Virginia Tech by 6, but if you couldn't tell, Virginia Tech had a pretty solid squad for themselves, really thriving out the last few years of Dresser down at Virginia Tech. This team would actually get a team trophy in 2016, the first ever in program history, with no finalists but 6 All-Americans, which was enough to edge out Iowa out of the team trophy hunt.
Big match and a big meet. There's Tom Ryan in his 10th season. National Coach of the Year in so many ways. Last year brought Ohio State their first ever NCAA team title. Also tied with Iowa for the Big Ten title. First time in over 60 years for Ohio State to win the Big Tens.
And the quick escape by Megaludis, so...
The real tell-off for Penn State, though, would come when they would face the returning champs and the Stieberless Ohio State team, and Penn State would win 24-14 in the duel. The returning NCAA champ Nathan Tomasello would stay on top, beating Nico Megaludis, and he would be his heel for the remainder of the season, with Megaludis never beating Tomasello. McCutcheon would beat Ohio State's Cinderella man Kenny Courts, and Bo Nickel would get the first of many in the very fun and very interesting rivalry between Miles Martin and Bo Nickel.
And we got a good one coming up at 174. These guys have some history. They've wrestled this year. Miles Martin, the freshman, up against Bo Nickel, also a freshman. Miles Martin was going to redshirt this year. And when they wrestled last, he was still redshirting. It was in an open tournament. Bo Nickel winning 4-3. Very active match. And Bo Nickel, the redshirt freshman out of Texas, and ranked #1. Here he comes.
Penn State kept it rolling all the way into nationals, dominating Big Tens, winning by almost 25 points, with Iowa finishing second over Ohio State by 1 point. All this led into the very fun, but still very one-sided national tournament. Heading into day 3, it was more interesting to watch Virginia Tech go on their backside run to earn their first ever team trophy. However, there was some highlights, of course. The major storyline for this NCAA tournament was Nick Gwiazdowski of NC State going for his 3rd national title. However, there was one little wrinkle in that plan. That wrinkle came from none other than the Ohio State University and their soon-to-be prodigy, Kyle Snyder. Kyle Snyder was coming off a world gold medal and was going up against Nick Gwiazdowski. This was easily one of the top 10 best matches and most up-hyped matches of all NCAA wrestling history. Gwiazdowski would get an early lead, but ultimately Snyder would come back to win his first ever national title, denying Gwiazdowski his 3rd, very similar to what he did to Tony Nelson just a few years prior. Ohio State would take 3rd in the running, behind a sneaky good Oklahoma State team who secured 2 national champions this year in Alex Derringer and Dean Heil. Then of course there was Penn State's run, where not only did they dominate, but they got some pretty favorable outcomes. Starting at 125 with Thomas Gilman upsetting Ohio State's Nathan Tomasello in the semifinals to give Iowa a finalist, but also eliminate Megaludis' heel for that season. Ultimately, Nico would end up beating Gilman and becoming a national champion to bookend his career, winning 6-3. Zane Rutherford would bonus his way through the tournament with an opening tech fall, 3 pins, and a major over a very tough Braden Sorensen of Iowa. There was also Jordan Conaway, who looked pretty solid all tournament, placing 6th place for the Nittany Lions, which ultimately, when you really crunch the numbers, really helped them.
Isaiah Martinez well on his way. We have not had an undefeated freshman champion since the great Cale Sanderson in '99. We have one now. It's Isaiah Martinez.
Assistant. Counter shot there by Knoll. He's really good in this position. Grab onto the leg. He's got back points. He's in control. No question about it. He may pin him here.
Fall with 3 seconds left.
What a
Never
shocker.
happened before. Martinez undefeated last year, an NCAA champion, undefeated this year after 61 straight wins. Jason Nolf, the redshirt freshman, gets a fall over the champion.
Bracket on how Nolf and Martinez come at each other for the 2nd time.
This match, Tim, is that he's been able to stuff Nolf's head with that front headlock. It's bought him some time and actually helped wear out Nolf a little bit. Nolf gets into a scramble. Martinez keeps his head up.
And Martinez is the champion, the Big Ten champion in double overtime, 6 overtime periods.
Boy, Tim, he really dug deep.
He did. He did. And so Nolf gets his first defeat.
A redshirt, a redshirt sophomore and a redshirt freshman. California native Martinez, Pennsylvania native Nolf. 9-4. Trying to get into the offense. He's got the two. He got the takedown. Inside of 10 to go. He cuts him loose. It's a 1-point lead. Final seconds ticking away. Round 3 goes to Ivar. Back-to-back titles for Isaiah Martinez.
Yes, despite all the magic during this season, there was still some heartbreak moments. Martinez would go on to beat Nolf in dramatic fashion twice at the Big Ten tournament and then in the national tournament finals, denying Nolf a shot to become a 4-time national champ. Bo Nick, who also avenged his only loss of the season in the national semifinals, would go down to freshman Miles Martin of Ohio State to take away his national championship hopes. Unlike years to come, Miles Martin was not a favorable seed coming in. He was actually the 11th seed. However, he showed off an incredible amount of talent this tournament, once again showing another huge stepping stone in this Penn State versus Ohio State rivalry.
Absolute young studs. He'll take another stall call there. He might be seeing the start of something special. A rivalry brewing, and the biggest upset of the tournament. It's Martin winning the title for Ohio State.
Ultimately though, Penn State won by 25.5 points over the second place team, but Ohio State was still really young, and even Oklahoma State was not done chasing down those Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I'll speak to how you can harness all the energy that's around this upcoming match to help positively grow the sport of wrestling and bring attention to it.
Well, I think there's a lot of interest in college wrestling right now. I think 10 years ago, a Penn State Ohio State is a big match, but it's not like it is today, right? It's I have two of the best teams in the country, and they have multiple national champions on their team. We have multiple national champions. So
it's a real grudge match now. You two among the best of the best. Yeah, it's a real rivalry. I think that I can't imagine being a student athlete on any team, either one of these teams, and not thinking that this is the little kid's dream, right? This is bases loaded, World Series, ninth inning. This is a lot of fun, and they've done a great job with their program. We've done a really good job here, and because of the people we have and the people they have, it's made it a great event.
Early in the season, everyone was picking Penn State to likely take out the Ohio State Buckeyes. But as the duel got closer and closer and Penn State seemed to get more and more questionable, people started to turn toward the Bucks, especially with Jason Nolf being out for what seemed like the remainder of the season and definitely the dual meet. There was just ultimately too many questions and too many unknowns heading in to really side with Penn State. Was Nick Lee ready to compete with a guy like Joey McKenna? Can the person wrestling for Nolf win or just not get bonus? Can the big guns bonus just enough for Penn State to make up for some of the other spots? How was the Nickel versus Martin match going to go? What were they going to do at 197? And heck, was Carson Kuhn ready to go out there? And was he as good as advertised? There was just so much hype leading into this duel. And somehow, at the end of the day, it was better than everyone expected, being coined the duel of the century.
One of the biggest rivalries in the sport of college wrestling here, these two national champions going at it in their junior year.
The duel started at 125, and after hitting an out-of-bounds headlock, Kuhn seemed like he could maybe stay with Nathan Tomasello. However, his lack of wrestling over the past few months really started to show as the match went on. Tomasello would end up getting the major decision win, which ultimately was really big for Penn State, not giving up a tech or pin here. 133 would see two PA legends and Luke Pletcher versus Corey Keener go to battle, which Keener would lose by only a point, but ultimately Pletcher would still get the win, extending the Buckeyes' lead to 7-0.
Matchup. Joey McKenna, an All-American a couple of years ago for Stanford, transferred to Ohio State. Nick Lee, a true freshman, really getting it done. Should be a great matchup, real important for Penn State right here. In a situation right here, TJ, you just said it. I mean, if you're Ohio State right now and Joey McKenna, foot on the gas, extend that lead as a team.
Then a very exciting match that everyone was super curious about. Could Nick Lee switch the momentum against a guy like Joey McKenna? And ultimately the answer was no, with McKenna showing just a little more experience over the young Nittany Lion, winning 7-6.
In the world, Kyle Snyder, the heavyweight, world and Olympic champion, and back on the college scene as a two-time NCAA champion, and a takedown by Keyshawn Hayes. You talk about the patience. You're very impressive by Keyshawn Hayes.
He's right back at it. That's another one.
2 takedowns right in a row.
The patience. He's getting right after it, Tim. That's a back-to-back, yeah.
Now, the momentum was definitely in Ohio State's favor, and it showed with Keyshawn Hayes coming out with the opening 2 takedowns on defending national champ Zane Rutherford. Rutherford would ultimately do what he did best and get a tech fall, but it was not looking good in Penn State's favor, especially with 157 fill-in Bo Pfeiffer giving up a tech fall to Micah Jordan the next match, basically even the playing field with Rutherford's tech fall. So at the end of the break of the duel, Ohio State won 4 of 5, really controlling the pace of the duel. However, most Penn State fans knew if there was going to be any chance of PSU winning, they would need the next 3 and for sure some bonus points to go on with it. And to be honest, the best way to describe the last half of the duel is that it was electric from 165 to the last second of heavyweight.
9-3. Now, riding time locked up.
Wow.
Boom! And there's the takedown and the major decision in hand right now. Another under 15-second takedown by Joseph. He did it at the end of the second period, did it in the third. He gets a major decision for it, and the crowd appreciates this effort. Bring him home. Workmanlike. That was a tough battle from Hall.
Well, the anticipation of Hall in this match and riding was just phenomenal.
Wow. We talked about it. What a way to bring the crowd to their feet. Gets the big win here at 184.
Well, the difference in Bo Nickel this year.
Trying to get past 45. He gets past 45 for 2. 45 degrees is the benchmark there, and he drives him over, and Bo Nickel gets a major decision as time runs out.
Vincenzo Joseph's major over Tayshaun Campbell, Mark Hall's win over rival Bo Jordan in a thriller 6-4 match, and then at the last second, Bo Nickel securing a major over Miles Martin to give Penn State their first lead of the duel, 16-15, lighting a spark in Rec Hall. But there was one major problem still looming. Penn State was without a doubt a heavy underdog heading into 197 and heavyweight, where Ohio State had the outright #1 wrestlers in the country, Colin Moore, who was undefeated at the time at 197, and Kyle Snyder, who was going for his 3rd national title. To add on to the insanity, no one knew who the 197 starter was going to be between Kassar and Rashid, and for sure no one expected either of them to win. But what happened next was pure madness in Rec Hall.
Several pins, but I think they felt a little more comfortable with Kassar out there.
From a matchup style.
Yeah.
opportunity. They have not made up their mind, obviously, at 197 for the postseason. Penn State, Kassar, and Shakur.
Oh, nice job there with a little misdirection there. It sits him down to his rear. That's one of the few times you're going to see Colin Moore get taken down.
Wow. Really impressive. Anthony Kassar with the takedown.
He's got a nice left-handed shot right there. He's going to go ahead and go hard. Not much of a setup there. He pays for it.
2 points for Kassar. 54 seconds left.
Kassar certainly looks like the more active one. Now remember, he's been warned for stalling.
5-3, Kassar.
But he also has riding time.
Right.
Yeah. Big win.
Big win.
Penn State's got some decisions at 197.
There's 2 more. No. Great hips. Great hips by Neville.
Wow.
And the crowd comes to their feet. Kyle Snyder wins, but so does Penn State.
I don't really know if it was the crowd, the preparation, the nerves, the environment, the Penn State magic, or I don't know, but Anthony Kassar would upset Colin Moore, getting 2 takedowns to 0, extending Penn State's lead. And after Kyle Snyder failed to tie the duel with a major decision, the Nittany Lions would win the duel of the century 19-18, keeping their national title dreams alive and putting a lot of speculation into the Ohio State corner.
Not to elaborate on the disappointment tonight, but couldn't help but think about when David Taylor lost as a freshman. Will you be able to use that as an example for Jason and Bo to help them overcome any disappointment or doubt they have tonight?
Well, I think there are a lot of examples where people lose and it propels them forward, you know, to greater heights, and maybe they wouldn't have reached had they not won. You know, David Taylor is a great example. You know, he was bigger than winning 4 national titles. You know, the reputation he built for himself, the way he competed, it's bigger than winning. You know, that's what we want to do. We want to be bigger than winning. For the most part, our guys are moving forward and trying to score points, and you know, in the long run, that's going to win. You know, and that's what we believe, and that's what we're going to do.
2017 was an interesting year. Isaiah Martinez bumped up to 165, so Jason Nolf was the heavy favorite at 157. Penn State added Vincenzo Joseph to the fold at 165, and he was an interesting addition for them. He would lose his second match ever, 18-12, to Keaton Subject of Stanford, and drop matches to Isaiah Martinez and Isaac Jordan in the Big Ten. So most people thought he'd be like a 5th place or lower All-American. He was originally recruited at a much lower weight class, so it was kind of fun to see him have success and compete against these 165-pounders. Mark Hall also joined the team this season, and he was one of the highest ranked recruits ever. He was in redshirt for a large chunk of the season, but after beating Oklahoma State All-American Crutchmer in the Southern Scuffle Finals, his redshirt was pulled and he entered the fold at 174, where he lost his first true match during the Iowa duel, leaving a lot of people scratching their heads.
We welcome 184-pound finalist Gabe Dean of Cornell. First off, Gabe, please start us off with an opening statement talking about your match tonight.
Real tough kid, you know, great competitor, and you know, he's in the semifinals for a reason. So staying focused and just keeping calm and mentally just, you know, plugging away. And my coach has got me ready for it, and we won. So it's awesome.
Bo Nickel was up at 184, where the reigning 2-time national champ Gabe Dean of Cornell was looking for his 3rd national title to end his career. Finally, Nick Suriano was also looking to be one of the best true freshmen ever for Penn State, only losing to Thomas Gilman of Iowa during the duel by a very tight margin heading into the final stretch of the season. However, the 2 teams who fell just short to Penn State in 2016 were not backing down to this arguably way better Penn State team. But for such a great team, they had a pretty poor Big Tens. Nick Sirianni would get hurt during the last duel of the season, earning Penn State 0 points at Big Tens. But we'll get back to that in a second. Jimmy Gulabon was a 2 seed at 141 and got upset very early to not even place top 6 at Big Tens. Vincenzo Joseph was on the same side as Isaiah Martinez, so he failed to make the finals but would wrestle back to take third, avenging his loss from earlier in the season to Isaac Jordan of Wisconsin, who was a returning finalist, so it was showing that Joseph was peaking at the right time. Bo Jordan would beat Mark Hall in the Big Ten Finals, along with Miles Martin getting his second career win over Bo Nickel, knocking him out of the Big Ten Finals run. Ultimately, these little blunders really hurt Penn State. Ohio State, on the other hand, really wrestled well, winning the Big Ten Tournament, making fans wonder if Ohio State could actually get it done at the national tournament. And another team asking the same thing was Oklahoma State over in the Big 12. They had 8 Big 12 champions and 10 finalists, meaning they only lost 2 matches in their entire conference tournament, along with technically being ranked the second best team in the country. All of these little storylines really built up to potentially an amazing national tournament that started out with controversy right out of the gate.
Kel McCutcheon said that since the guys are a little fired up about Nick's situation not being able to wrestle and the team's kind of wrestling a little harder for Nick in that sense. Do you sense that at all, that these guys are fired up because of that and how that happened?
Yeah, yes and no. I think they want to win as a team, and it's having Sirianni with them in there obviously helps us. But they, more than anything, I think they feel bad for Nick because he was a guy that has wanted to do great here.
Tournament seeding is big in all sports, especially wrestling. Yes, if you are truly better, you'll probably win the tournament and seeds don't really matter. But in some cases, especially for team points, seeding can really matter at the national tournament, which all leads back to that Nick Sirianni injury. He was slotted in to be the 3 seed, and Oklahoma State starter Nick Piccinini was the 8 seed. So if any seeds higher than Piccinini were to drop out per se, he would move away from the number 1 seed and go to the bottom of the bracket, which would somewhat give him an easier route to the finals potentially, which playing the long game would give Oklahoma State some much needed points to take out Penn State. However, Penn State decided to leave Nick Sirianni in, even though he injury defaulted out of the tournament, which mitigated the number of points Oklahoma State could get at 125. And considering Piccinini's only loss were to the number 1 seed Thomas Gilman in the entire tournament, there's a high chance he could have had finalist level points. These minor little strategies, if we'll call them that, might seem a little petty, but they could have turned the tide for Penn State, especially since Oklahoma State ended up having 8 All-Americans this year and still finished in 3rd. Ohio State and Penn State both had 6, but ultimately Penn State would edge them both out with one of the biggest achievements in the sport.
Team working, 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1, and Nickel makes it 5.
Jason Nolf and Zane Rutherford would both bonus their opponents in the finals, giving Rutherford his 2nd national title and Nolf his very first. In one of the craziest national finals of the year and maybe even ever, Vincenzo Joseph would avenge a loss to a 2-time national champion who beat his teammate just a year prior by hitting his signature inside trip right to his back for the fall, becoming a freshman national champion. Mark Hall would create his own out-of-conference rivalry, going on a true freshman run, beating the heavy favorite at the weight Zahid Valencia of Arizona State. This was a semifinal win, and he would go on to avenge his loss to Bo Jordan of Ohio State, denying Jordan a national title and becoming a true freshman national champion. Then, to end the night, Bo Nickel would have one of the biggest upsets ever, taking out 2-time national champion and the man who snapped Ed Roof's win streak a few years prior, Gabe Dean. It's wild to think Penn State went from a very mediocre Big Tens to one of the best NCAA runs ever, really showing fans, recruits, and especially opposing teams that they know how to peak at the right time. However, as Penn State was celebrating, there was the Ohio State Buckeyes boiling over and sick of the Nittany Lions winning, and they would assemble one of the best NCAA teams ever to try and take out Penn State in one of the best NCAA seasons ever.
So this was Ohio State tweeted this. This was their finishes at Big Tens. First, second, first, third, second, qualified, third, second, first. Unbelievable. At Big Tens.
At Big Tens.
Unbelievable.
They scored 170 points.
The 2018 Big Ten tournament was very similar to the 2017 Big Tens, and that was Ohio State found a way to knock out those Nittany Lions, except this time winning by a very large margin and locking up the tournament very early. Ohio State would have 4 champions to Penn State's 3, along with Jason Nolf still not looking 100%, considering he won his first match and then forfeited out of the tournament. On the other hand, Ohio State did win, but they had some questionable performances too. Bo Jordan failed to make the Big Ten finals for another shot at Mark Hall, but he would still bounce back for third. Miles Martin would also lose again to Bo Nickel in the finals. However, Ohio State helped themselves out in a lot of spots. Keyshawn Hayes placed third, which really showed that he's an All-American threat. Micah Jordan pinning Michael Kemmer to make the finals really put him on notice and shot their team points through the roof, along with Luke Pletcher making the finals at 133. Ultimately, if Penn State wanted to beat Ohio State, they would need, as always, their big guns to shine, some Cale Sanderson luck, and for their non-champs to overperform their seeds. And now, with all that said, let's finally talk about the best NCAA Wrestling Tournament. Over 4 years of tensions rising, Penn State losing one dynasty to build another. Years of Ohio State building a super team off the success of their national championship. And all the crazy storylines leading into the first day of the national tournament. Day 1 of the national tournament is truly something special. 33 wrestlers in every weight class coming off a conference weekend, and there's just a lot of speculation built up around every single wrestler, especially leading into the 2018 tournament. What Penn State needed was for all their big guns to do their thing, along with a few guys entering that All-American round. Ohio State just needed to follow their game plan and keep advancing wrestlers into those All-American rounds as well. Both plans a lot easier said than done. However, Ohio State would put on a master class in that first round, going a perfect 10 for 10 with several bonus point wins scattered throughout. It even seemed like when the March Madness was trying to pick off Ohio State, they avoided the chaos. Keyshawn Hayes nearly skated by Malik Amin of Michigan, only defeating him 6-5 in overtime. Colin Moore only won 12-8, along with Bo Jordan having to dig deep and win in overtime as well. However, no matter how it looked, everyone from Ohio State was advancing around too, and they could not have followed their game plan any better.
Coach Ryan, obviously you guys are battling out. You guys have had some tight wins. What is your thoughts on you guys' performance?
Well, we look tight. We look like, the nerves got to us a little bit that round. And this is a big tournament, right? There's a lot of good guys. Your record's 0-0. Everyone's record here is 0-0. And you got to be ready to score points. And the good thing is that when we needed to, we did. And the goal was to go 10-0. We thought we'd get some more bonus points in that round. But we got all moving forward, and that's good.
Penn State, on the other hand, had some very early turbulence Thursday morning. Corey Keener got pinned his very first match, along with Nick Lee slotting at the 8th seed getting tossed and pinned as well round 1, which both those losses were very heart-shattering for Penn State fans at the time. However, everyone else appeared to do their job, which honestly kept Penn State alive at the time. Rutherford and Nolf opened up the day with tech falls, with everyone else gaining major decision wins, except for heavyweight Nevels, who secured the pin. Nolf had one of the biggest braces I've ever seen in the sport on, but he looked like he was still wrestling very well. So despite some of the early round defeats, Penn State was still alive, but chasing ahead into Thursday night.
So there's a lot of great teams here, right? Preseason, you look at returning All-Americans, returning national champions. The preseason poll would say that 2 teams seem to be a little bit better than the other teams. I think to some degree that's held. The fact that we have the team that we have, and
We know we're in a serious dogfight. Speaks volumes to the team that Cal has. I believe that there's a good chance that on Saturday night, the second place team will be the best second place team to ever wrestle in the national tournament, right? I mean, that's the kind of ability that some of these teams have here, Penn State being that team. So.
Session 2 was another masterclass for Ohio State, going 9 for 10 in the second round, putting 9 into the quarterfinals, with some of the Bucks scoring major points. Tomasello will get a pin and an injury default win, which scores the exact same as a pin. Luke Pletcher entered the quarters with 2 very tight victories. McKenna had 2 tech falls and would be a big favorite in his Friday morning quarterfinal match. Hayes responded with a 12-6 win to put himself in the quarterfinals. Micah Jordan got a major decision win and a pin to enter into the quarters, where he would wrestle the 15 seed Friday morning, where he had very favorable odds to All-American. Bo Jordan would bounce back from an overtime win to major his second round opponent. Miles Morrow would appear as the true 2 seed, winning by tech fall in round 1, and then major decision in round 2. Colin Moore would also get a major decision in this round, bouncing off just a decision win, along with Ohio State leader Kyle Snyder securing 2 wins to make the quarterfinals.
Yeah, we looked a lot better tonight than this morning. I think, you know, the nerves got to a couple of guys in the morning, and when you can find a way to get through those matches in the early round and get in these rounds, we're in good shape. So it was a good day, 19 out of 20. But look, a lot of these guys are here to win.
So yeah, Ohio State wasn't just winning, they were dominating this tournament. The only wrestler to not win in round 2 was Tayshaun Campbell, but to a degree he was kind of doing his job considering he was the 13 seed. He also had an alright route to make the round of 12, or aka the blood round, where anything could really happen and he could maybe slip into that top 8. On the other hand though, while Ohio State was dominating NCAAs, what was Penn State up to this round? Nick Lee and Corey Keener would secure wins, making it to the next day, but would only score a half a point each with regular decision wins. For those who don't know, whenever you're in the consolation bracket, all the normal scoring that happens on the top side of the bracket is technically cut in half. For example, a regular decision win is 1 point on the top side of the bracket, but in the consolation bracket, it's only half a point. However, still getting wrestlers to the next day was very pivotal for Penn State, especially since everyone else appeared to be doing their job to keep them alive. Rutherford would get his first pin of the tournament, along with Rashid and Hall also getting bonus point wins. Nolf looked alright, winning 6-1, with Nickel and Joseph both securing regular decision wins as well. Honestly though, one of the biggest matches of the round, and maybe even the tournament so far, was Neville's having a rematch against one of his defeats from the Southern Scuffle, Michael Boykin of NC State. This match went into overtime, and at very pivotal moments it did not look good for Penn State fans. But Neville's did what he had to, and ended Nittany Lions' day on a very good note.
We'll find out over the next 3 days if our team's happy to be here, but we have a great team of great young men that are just, you know, stand-up guys and great competitors, and you know, they love each other, and you know, we'll see what happens after 3 days.
Starting day 2 was truly nerve-wracking if you were a Penn State fan. You were up late on Thursday, and things were starting to really in Ohio State's favor. However, day 2 is where the true leaders come out, because at the end of the day, Friday, everyone will know who's getting finalist level points, All-American level points, and who's staying out of the All-American parade. For me personally, I think day 2 of the NCAA tournament is the best day of all of them. You start the day with quarterfinals and then get bonus wrestling after that, with guys wrestling up to the round of 12/blood round. And then the night session is the blood round and semifinals, with another bonus Conti round. Like, it's absolutely crazy. The biggest thing to note is guys who make it into the semifinals instantly clinch top 6 All-American team points. In NCAA scoring, that is absolutely huge, and then winning to make the finals is another 6 points. So yeah, you could score 12 points for your team in just 2 wins. This strategy alone was why Penn State was so dominant, because their level of finalists. However, Ohio State still had a huge lead on them, so they would need more than wins and finalists here. Session 3 started out hotter than ever for the Buckeyes, getting their first semifinalist by way of major decision, with Nathan Tomasello advancing, and that train would not stop with both Luke Pletcher and Joey McKenna advancing as well. Fellow Bucks like Micah Jordan, Miles Martin, and Kyle Snyder would also punch their ticket into the top 6 status.
You know, the Penn State, Ohio State expectations.
Yeah.
It's getting, it's happening.
Heated.
Here.
You know, it's heated. They lost 2 tough ones. I think
Yeah.
97 was up by 1 with 20 to go.
Just lost at heavyweight.
Their heavyweight just lost in a couple classes. So this thing's far from over. It's gotten really interesting. I really thought we were going to put 9 into the semis. I felt confident about 9. And what did we get? We got 6.
Yeah.
We got 6. So 6 in the semis. A lot to be proud of.
Penn State, on the other hand, was winning, but they also had some drop-off. Corey Keener would get pinned in his opening match of the Friday session. Nick Lee stayed alive with a 5-0 win, beating the 9 and 10 seeds on the backside of the bracket, really showing that the NCAA gods were making him earn these Conti round wins. Nick Nevels lost to Oregon State's Amar Desi, and at 197, Shakur Rashid lost to eventual champ Mike Machiavelli of NC State in a crazy 5-4 match. Rutherford, Nolf, Joseph, Hall, and Nickel all advanced, with Rutherford getting the only bonus point win of the group. However, the Penn State 5 had their fair share of drama this round. Vincenzo would go into overtime winning a super close and competitive match with Nebraska's Isaiah White, and Jason Nolf had to wrestle former Young Guns teammate and Iowa Hawkeye Michael Kemmer in the quarterfinals, winning 6-2. Once again, Penn State survived, but they could have for sure done better. However, the wins this round for Penn State were not ultimately what kept them alive. There were 3 very pivotal key moments this round that really gave Penn State fans hope and almost shattered Ohio State fans' belief.
Campbell needs a takedown. If he loses, he's done. The Buckeyes lose their point options at 165.
Yep. Short time.
Shooting, looking, Wanzik backpedaling. There's a shot by Campbell. Will he have enough time to finish? No! Wanzik with riding time hangs on. A 4-3 win. And Ohio State sees their wrestler at 165 get eliminated.
Tayshaun Campbell would win one more match on the backside, but would drop his second Conti match to only score Ohio State 1.5 points. Then, of course, there was the overtime thriller match between Hayes and Heilman that ultimately came down to the last few seconds.
Coming up on 10 seconds. Hayes looking for a reversal. The Buckeye at the edge. But Heilman just keeps wrestling tough. And now Ohio State will challenge. Ohio State will challenge. I don't think they're going to win this one. I think Heilman is going to have himself a 2-1 victory.
Like to see it go a little bit quicker.
It is no reversal. Troy Heilman of North Carolina gives the Tar Heels a semifinalist. Heilman over Hayes, 2-1 in the...
A Hayes win here could have clinched the title for Ohio State, but instead Heilman took the victory, giving the Tar Heels an All-American. Then in one of the most shocking results of the tournament, Kent State's Kyle Cannell comes out of nowhere to pin the #1 seed Colin Moore, causing Cleveland to go into an absolute state of madness.
Here in Cleveland, man, there's no question about it. You did not wrestle last year. You were not on Kent State's team. You were not a guy that was on the roster. You were not active in the sport last year. You are in the NCAA semifinals. You just pinned the #1 guy in the country. How does it feel, and what's this journey been like?
It's awesome. This is I feel amazing. This is the greatest feeling in the world, and I'm so glad I have everyone, pretty much everyone here supporting me, and I feel like that just drives me to do so much better. And I'm so grateful and so thankful I had another opportunity to do this. Thanks to my coaches. I really appreciate everything. Thanks to the administration at Kent State. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cannell's run up to this point was madness in its own right. He won 3-2 in round 1 in a pigtail match, beat Weigel of Oklahoma State, who teched him a month and a half prior. Then he beat the 8th seed 8-2 before pinning the all-year #1 Colin Moore, really hurting Ohio State's chances of clinching the team title before Saturday. And when I say no one, I mean no one saw this session going down the way it did, but it really cranked up the Friday night session to an ultimate high. The semifinals were set, and this is where everything shifted. Penn State was not favored in every match, but they had higher odds to get their semifinalists into the finals compared to Ohio State, who had 3 wrestlers favored to make the finals and only pushed 2 of them through. Another note that gets really overshadowed is the backside wrestling in this tournament. Penn State and Ohio State both had weapons that could win their blood round matches to keep their point scoring alive, and Nick Lee did just that, winning 4 matches in a row to be an All-American and then majoring another opponent to guarantee top 6. Kayshawn Hayes, on the other hand, lost at 149, giving Ohio State 1 less All-American there. However, Colin Moore and Bo Jordan would slide into All-American status, along with both of them securing 1 more win that night to take top 6. On the other side of the coin, Penn State had more wrestlers also push through, like their quarterfinal loser Shakur Rashid would win, along with Nick Neville's also pushing into the top 8. Talking in greater detail about the semifinals, where Penn State did what they do best, going a perfect 5-0 in the semis, and if you count the blood round matches, they went 8-0 during the first round of Friday night. Ohio State, on the other hand, really started to show some cracks. Tomasello would get upset for the 3rd year in a row in the semifinals, getting pinned by Spencer Lee of Iowa, who he split with during the season. Spencer Lee would go on to win the 2018 tournament for his first of 3 titles for the Hawkeyes. Luke Pletcher would lose to the same guy who beat him at Big Ten, Stefan Mitrich of Michigan. Joey McKenna lost to Wyoming star Bryce Meredith 1-0, and Jason Nolf would tech fall Micah Jordan. Ohio State would push through Kyle Snyder and Miles Martin, but one thing stood out. As the tournament got longer, Penn State seemed to get stronger. Nolf got a tech, Hall got a pin, Joseph took out a higher seed than him, and Rutherford nearly got a bonus in his match. Counting the first round of Session 4, considering the blood round and semis, Ohio State went 4 for 5, still giving themselves 8 All-Americans, which was 1 more than Penn State. So there was still hope, but they would really need to wrestle well on Saturday to beat a 5 finalist team.
You trailed by 13.5 going into the night. Now you're in the lead, 5-0 in the semifinals. How do you explain that kind of success?
Well, those are big matches. Semifinals are big matches, big points, but there's still a lot of points available tomorrow, so we got to just keep scoring points.
Characterized tonight. It's a tough way to earn a living, I'll tell you that much. Great. In some aspects and some challenging. A lot of high, typical tournament. I look forward to the day when I come to a national tournament and every person in my organization leaves happy. So there was some tough losses, some great wins, teams battling. We've got 8 All-Americans, which is the most we've ever had. But we had a lot of wrestling tomorrow. Mathematically, I know it's not over. I think we're down by 10 or 11. Who knows the exact score? But we're not out of it, and we got some big matches tomorrow.
Coming into day 3, there was still a lot to figure out. Penn State had 3 wrestlers on the backside, 2 of which only had 7th place matches, with Nick Lee having a 5th place match. Ohio State, on the other hand, did have a dramatic Friday night, but they have more weapons still alive to keep their national title hopes in the conversation. Tomasello would battle back to take 3rd, ending his career as a 4-time top 3 All-American. Luke Pletcher won his Conti semi match before another Cleveland Cinderella story, Tariq Wilson of NC State, would knock him out for a 3rd place spot, but top 4 is still a lot of points. McKenna would take out Jay and Ironman of Missouri to finish top 3. Micah Jordan would slide to take 6, but his brother Bo would get a forfeit for his 5th place match, earning pin level points. Colin Moore would rattle off a few wins before losing to Cannell again for 3rd to finish in the 4th place spot, but still earned the team several points along the way. At the end of the Saturday morning 5th session, Ohio State still had a 6-point lead, so Penn State once again need to rely on their big guns, some of which, if not all of them, had very questionable matches that you could argue they were not favored in. The build-up was finally over. 10 matches to go, starting at 125, going all the way up to heavyweight, where Kyle Snyder would bookend the night and potentially win the title for his team for the second time in his career. However, he was going up against one of his only defeats in his entire college career, the Wolverine, Adam Kuhn.
Can't get that back trip. Pressure's time, winding down. 5 seconds, 4. Adam Kuhn has done it for Michigan.
Kyle Snyder would later avenge this loss in the Big Ten Finals, but it was still not a give-me match considering they split during the season, and Adam Kuhn was no slouch. Vincenzo Joseph and Mark Hall would both have rivalry matches, with Joseph going up against the man he beat at last year's NCAAs, but lost to during this season. Mark Hall had Zahid Valencia, who he beat in a wild low-scoring match in last year's semifinal, when it was Zahid's tournament to win. Rutherford had another crazy Cinderella story in Ronald Perry of Lockhaven, who took out Rutherford's arch nemesis Brandon Sorensen of Iowa in the second round. Nolf had a young up-and-comer who was also a Pennsylvania legend and undefeated this season for NC State, Hayden Hidlay. And up to this point, Nolf's knees seemed fine, but who really knew? Then of course, a match that most people thought was going to decide it all, Bo Nickel versus Miles Martin, one of the most epic rivalries between Penn State and Ohio State. Ultimately, fans knew that these finals were not going to disappoint. But how did they all go? And who became the champion of the 2018 National Tournament? For starters, besides the obvious Penn State versus Ohio State matches, these finals were legendary and very historic. Spencer Lee won his first national title as a true freshman and became the Brands brothers' first true freshman national champion, and he beat Nick Suriano and Nathan Tomasello to do it. Seth Gross won a title for South Dakota State, along with future four-timer Yanni Diakomahalis winning his first national title of 4. At 197, Mike Machiavello reversed his ACC final loss to Jared Hall of Virginia Tech, winning himself a national title. But after 125, 133, and 141, the madness truly started with the Penn State train starting with Zane Rutherford.
Penn State returning 5 champions from a year ago, the first time that any team has done that. And this is where it starts at 149 pounds, all the way through 184 pounds for the Nittany Lions, trying to retake the lead in the team race from Ohio State, which earlier today jumped back in front, 130.5 to 124.5. A victory in the finals gets you 14 points, possibility of as many as 6 with bonus points. And today, Penn State, with their 5 finalists, can score as many as 30. Ohio State, with just 2 finalists, Snyder being one of those, can score a maximum of 12. Stall warning, Rutherford. As time expires, Rutherford, a champion for the 3rd time.
Rutherford would get the win over Ronald Perry, shortening the gap of Ohio State's lead. Also, even though Perry of Lockhaven didn't win a national title, he put up one of the best fights ever in any of Zane Rutherford's matches. He even got an escape against Zane Rutherford, which didn't happen very often. But nevertheless, Penn State closed the gap and Jason Nolf was up next.
Well, obviously there's been a lot of speculation about the injury for Nolf, and obviously he knows he hasn't forgotten how to wrestle, and he's been very deliberate and intentional and effective. But I'm also very impressed for a freshman, Hidley. He's presented himself well. He just has not been able to get that underhook from the left because Nolf's just been too intelligent. He's blocked it off each time, but he's a fine looking freshman. I'd say great win for Nolf, but again, no bonus points for Penn State.
With Nolf's second championship, the Nittany Lions leapfrog the Buckeyes into first place in the team race. A major decision in the finals last year, a little bit closer this year for Nolf, but it still feels just as good to stand on top of the podium.
Despite having a massive leg brace on, he would take out undefeated freshman to win his second national title, with the next match being Vincenzo Joseph versus Isaiah Martinez once again for the 165 national title.
Down to 10 seconds.
Tremendous second victory for Joseph here. Proves himself.
Last year, a shocker as a freshman, winning by fall, and this year surprises no one. Vincenzo Joseph at 165.
Joseph would once again reverse a Big Ten loss and end Isaiah Martinez's career as a 4-time finalist and 2-time national champion. Vincenzo Joseph would secure his second national title here. Penn State now had the lead heading into 174, but nothing was clinched. Mark Hall was next up to bat, but unfortunately the streak for Penn State would end here.
You don't have a stall warning. And look at that.
Two more
what
for
a year, a difference, you know, what a difference a year makes.
Zahid Valencia would take out Mark Hall, getting the match back from the very controversial loss from a year prior, and becoming a Sun Devil national champ in the process and adding another stitch to the Mark Hall versus Zahid Valencia rivalry. Then the match that decided it all.
Guys, we've got two of the young stars in this sport right now.
Bo Nickel versus Miles Martin.
Oh my gosh, Miles Martin! Deja vu body lock to his back!
Martin wins. He sets up Kyle Snyder going for his third national title to clinch the win for the Buckeyes.
Bo Nickel, he is the Big Ten champion for the Nittany Lions over his rival, Miles Martin.
Martin loses to Nickel. Penn State wins the 2018 national title.
Team title could be decided here as well. A win for Bo Nickel is a team championship for Penn State.
So Martin's doing a nice job of keeping those feet moving. He's circling, trying to create some angles here. He's got to keep that going. Keep attempting some shots here. Keep Bo Nickel on his heels. That's where he was the most dangerous, when he was able to beat Bo Nickel, when he was pushing forward, when he was constantly attacking. Wants to build that confidence up and keep moving.
For Martin.
Oh, he's got the chin. Bo is so tough right here.
Look at the finish, and he does. Nickel with the championship for himself and for the Nittany Lions.
The 2018 National Tournament was a masterpiece in my eyes, and many others. Ohio State put together one of the best teams ever and still fell short to Penn State's dynasty. Penn State had some very close calls in 2014 or maybe even 2017, but nothing even close to what happened in 2018, which was just such a great tournament. There was Cinderella stories, amazing storylines, masterclass wrestling, and just so much more. Kyle Snyder would go on to beat Adam Kuhn of Michigan and become a 3-time national champion. Following this year, Penn State would win again in 2019, as Ohio State would look to reload, losing guys like Kyle Snyder, Bo Jordan, and Nathan Tomasello. A new team would emerge in Iowa, especially with the new transfer portal in NCAA Wrestling. Wrestling's very different now, and I honestly think this Ohio State team showed the new landscape for college wrestling just isn't the old model anymore. You need a super team of 8 to 10 guys to get the job done. Nowadays, you almost need that many to get a trophy, let alone win it all. I think wrestling in general elevated from this tournament. We had greats like the Penn State guys, but also Spencer Lee, Yanni Diakomahalis, Kyle Snyder, and so many more to thank. With so many legends in the sport going on to just do great things. The 2018 tournament changed the game, and we can all thank that Penn State versus Ohio State rivalry that kept the 2018 season interesting from start to finish.